2, 1, and we are recording with Dr. George Fareed, episode 550, and the third episode since we have been permanently banned from YouTube. Dr. Fareed was banned a couple weeks ago, and I can happily inform him that I am now part of that that group. And so, as we were just talking about before we started recording, censorship will only prevail if we all walk away with our tails between our legs. But that's not that's not who I am. That's not who you are. For all the new listeners, and to establish your credibility, because I like to do this when I interview physicians such as yourself, please introduce yourself and tell everyone your medical background.
Well, I'm George Fareed, a family practice doctor in the Imperial Valley of Southern California. I've been here for 31 years or more. I started the HIV clinics in the valley and continue to take care of most of the HIV patients, but I just primarily do family practice, family medicine, hospitalist work, in nursing home work, wound care work. I just came here because I wanted to reach into many areas of medicine that I couldn't do in an urban area or in an academic center. So I have a background from Harvard and UCLA, and I background in virology. And I had we were thrust into the COVID pandemic because we became the epicenter for California. And so a colleague of mine, who's an amazing, great doctor named Brian Tyson, and I charged right ahead with early treatment. And that was what I had always done for HIV and what I tried to do in other areas of medicine. And so we used a protocol that we made based upon work from Didier Raoult and from Vladimir Zelenko in New York, and from research that was published using hydroxychloroquine as a backbone. And the protocol that we used was a bit stronger than those of other people. And maybe because of that, with the antibiotic, doxycycline, azithromycin, zinc, vitamin D, and aspirin, we ended up with currently now over 7,000 patients that have been treated. We're publishing an article that describes the results of 4,476 patients, of whom 99.96% fully recovered, very high-risk patients. And so that's what we aimed for from the beginning, and everything showed it worked, and we wouldn't have continued if it wasn't working. And we tried to get this recognized by Fauci and the NIH and FDA and all over the county and the country and state. And there was pretty much dead silence and a propagandizing of the general medical community against any early treatment. So that's my background. It's still taking patients from around the country who can't get this treatment early and locally, and still seeing very great efficacy with now ivermectin added in it since November of last year, and then now monoclonal antibodies infused if they can be obtained, and if it's justified because of symptoms in the patient or more risk factors. But the combination with the Regeneron and Eli Lilly monoclonal antibody infusion with our oral agents makes it 100% effective. It's really been very gratifying in that regard. But we didn't use those monoclonal antibodies for the first year, and we still had that our results in the paper are primarily from the population that just had the oral medications. And then I spoke in Washington in November with Peter McCullough and Harvey Risch on early treatment at the Senate. And then I was just recently asked to come to Rome, Italy in 2 weeks to speak to their Senate. And so I'm updating my speech from November and making much stronger, actually, to present in Rome, Italy, to the Senate there for the first international COVID summit of doctors and lawyers and informed people advocates for what needs to be done to overcome the pandemic. That's so I've got to get ready for that short trip to Italy.
Is there any hope that your treatment and your methods will start to gain traction as you go to Italy? Because it's just so absurd that there are physicians such as yourself having these, I mean, next to miraculous results with all, generic drugs, I guess aside from monoclonal antibodies, and and yet there's just mum's the word. No one says a word about any of it. You got to take
Well,
the
it's been a
vaccine or
terrible
nothing.
suppression, and I think Peter McCullough hits on it very well. The great cardiologist and internist from Dallas, Texas, who's been our leader on early treatment, and from the academic sort of background and tremendous breadth of knowledge. He gave a beautiful lecture in Michigan a week ago. It was to a nice group of people. I don't know who it was specifically, but it's on the internet. It was an hour-long lecture, and in that he laid out everything on the pandemic and on the importance of early treatment, and it's quite clear that what's suppressed this and what is still suppressing it is this charging with and backing of the vaccine approach. And the vaccines would be fine if they were sterilizing or if they were protective, but they don't block the infection. And so they're leaky vaccines. They created the variants. They created Delta variant out of a vaccinated population, and they'll continue to create variants as they're pushed. And that's what continues to suppress us, that mandates for vaccines, boosters that shouldn't be needed in the first year of a vaccine program, and toxic vaccines that are expressing the worst part of the COVID virus in the form of that spike protein from the original infecting primary variant, basically, original variant of COVID-19. And so you're left with having to realize that the sinister component around the country, around the world, has been this powerful vaccine industry, and whoever else have intentions to promote it without understanding what they're doing. And it's so that's basically what leads us to news reports coming out that are denigrating ivermectin or other agents that really are beneficial, and the misinformation and to the public that and making them fearful, continually fearful, when it's a very, very treatable illness, very treatable viral condition with these generic agents, and now with the monoclonal antibodies when they're needed. And that's what should have been the thrust of everything from the get-go. And collateral damage isn't acceptable when you have millions of people dying and maimed and injured for the rest of their lives.
It seems like we're living through a moment that we will look back on one day, or our kids will look back on one day, that is no different than every doctor smokes Lucky Strikes, or the pregnant woman in the 50s with the glass of wine. I drink while I'm pregnant and I'm fine.
Yeah, exactly. You're right. That's a good analogy, actually.
It feels like that's what we're going through.
It's something far beyond that, though, but it is relevant. It's a good analogy.
Well, even I've interviewed Gerald Posner, an investigative journalist and author, who, of his many books, one of them is just called Pharma, and he really focuses on the Sackler family in Purdue, and they're pushing of OxyContin, as well as bribing physicians to do so, and you have all these maps of how they can push it more and exclude competitors, and then block negative side effects. And again, I mean, so the Lucky Strikes and the pregnant woman, I mean, those are the 50s, but I mean, this was in the 90s. You can go back and find the commercials on YouTube where it's like, I hurt my back, while working construction. OxyContin gave me my life back. And at first you're like, great, he got his life back. And it's like, and with no real side effects. And now if you said that to someone with a straight face, here's OxyContin, there's no downsides, they'd smack you. I'd say, what are you doing? Put that down. It's going to lead to heroin.
Absolutely. Yeah, you're absolutely correct. So many bad things that are pushed for financial gain,
And
of a
it's,
few at the
yeah,
expense of the millions of the masses.
it's
It's
just it's just absurd. And I mean, even the VAERS data. I mean, now that we're kicked off YouTube, I can just talk about all this stuff freely. But I mean, to date, 13,627 deaths, and that's not including 1,671 miscarriages. That's just in the United States.
but
Just
that may be very actually significant underreporting or underestimation. Some will say that it's as high as 45,000 fatalities.
which is just it is there. That's one side of the insidiousness of this, the evil nature of this. The
Mhm.
other side is the amount of lives that have been lost, not to adverse effects from the vaccine, but rather from squashing and suppression of early treatment. Up to didn't Dr. McCullough say upwards of thinks 85% of hospitalizations could be avoided?
Well, if you use our data, it would be 99.9%.
99.99.
Yeah, and I think he's right. That's his conservative estimate.
Yeah.
And so you're then left with 600. We have 650,000 fatalities in the United States to this time. There might have been 60,000 total if it had been handled properly. It's just not acceptable, or even less, probably 20,000 perhaps. Well, I shouldn't say that, because the when we push really firmly for early treatment based upon the work of Harvey Risch in May, June of 2020, we were at about 40 or 50,000 deaths already.
Yeah.
But it all should have been pushed forward well before that, and that would have brought the number down.
And perhaps this is beyond the scope of the conversation, but I mean, it feels like we're moving from this place of, maybe I guess like bad faith advertising with Lucky Strikes or something, right? It seems like we're moving from this place of, that was done in poor taste, to almost like a different layer, like the upper atmosphere of criminal activity. Like violation of like the Nuremberg Code. It seems like it's a human
Mhm.
rights violation. It seems like it's a crime against humanity. If
Oh yeah, no, you're absolutely right, Tommy. It's a violation of the Nuremberg Code, and it's a crime against humanity. And there are a lot of people that are guilty of this that hopefully they'll be held accountable. And then when you add in that we're dealing with a gain of function research virus generated through lab manipulations that were very diabolical to create a more highly infectious, lethal virus is mind-boggling and just so very pathetic, sad.
it's
It's not.
do you see how do you see is it going to be something along the lines of you're just going to keep performing your treatments and it will just go its own way and people that want it will pursue it? Or is there any and not that you would I don't know who could have the answer to this, who has a crystal ball, is there any way in which the dam breaks? Is there something such as your trip to Rome where we'll
I
get
hope so. Maybe this COVID summit international will be a tipping point. I'm. It could be. I hope so. I'm very honored to be asked to go and to present again to their Senate, and so that's why I'm updating my speech, and there's a lot more to add to it. And so I suspect that's what they'll want me to do, if not also present a more formal type of lecture on brief lecture, though, along with many other primary doctors and frontline people, experts who have the actual data and our knowledge that, like Peter McCullough and Harvey Risch, and the irrefutable information that educates people in the right way. So I'll be prepared to give a talk in a more of a slide presentation, but also one where you don't use slides necessarily, but you're just speaking from as I did in Washington to the senators.
Mhm. is could you got you 15 more minutes. Could you actually go in and kind of explain what your early treatment is? Because for a layman like myself, I mean, I hear
Sure.
kind of all these terms in the ether. It's ivermectin, it's hydroxychloroquine, it's make sure you take vitamin D. It's all
Yeah.
these.
No,
What
well,
is yeah.
it was from the beginning and still is a combination of medications that synergize, that work together. It's just like in HIV, you use multiple agents that in effect synergize, that are antiviral specifically, or in other viral infections. But in this case, the best agent was and may still be hydroxychloroquine, that has multiple actions, that molecular actions that inhibit the multiplication of COVID-19. And the purpose of using the protocol, the combination of agents, is to block its multiplication early before it does damage to the respiratory system and spreads to the lungs and other parts of the body. And so the actual protocol is a 5-day treatment that can be intensified and extended, that involves hydroxychloroquine, 400 milligrams twice a day on the first day, and then 200 milligrams or 1 tablet 3 times a day on the days 2 through 5. For children, the dosing can be lower. It's very safe in children and in pregnant women. So it's used at a lower dosage, but also very effective. And then it's what's added to it is an intracellular antibiotic like azithromycin, and that's the one specifically that I use in children or in pregnant women because it's safe in those individuals. But the other one that is more commonly in adults is called doxycycline, and these are intracellular antibiotics that have antiviral action. Actually, it wasn't appreciated. And so they're, in addition to being antibiotics to protect the respiratory system from other infections that can be secondary. And then one adds in the zinc, that is a antiviral agent when it gets in the cell, and that's carried intracellular by hydroxychloroquine. It's called an ionophore mechanism of the hydroxychloroquine, and that inhibits the RNA polymerase of COVID-19. But hydroxychloroquine is a very potent sigma-1 receptor agonist. So it blocks the sigma-1 receptor that's a intracellular protein in what's called the endoplasmic reticulum. And it's called sort of a chaperone protein that allows other proteins that are formed, such as those of COVID-19, to fold properly. And when they aren't given this chaperone, they don't fold properly, and that blocks their replication. So then there are other mechanisms that it has also, but in addition, we use now ivermectin, that's come up in many very good studies, but not nearly as extensive as hydroxychloroquine in nationwide studies and individual peer-reviewed studies, and where it also has a intracellular blocking action for COVID-19, blocking a intranuclear transport step that the virus requires, and also blocking the spike protein and having a benefit later in the infection that's distinctly different from hydroxychloroquine. And then we add in, and that's also just 2 doses usually in our protocol. For other protocols, it might be more doses that are given. And then we add in, as I said, the vitamin D3, that's low levels are negative for COVID-19. The patients do much worse if they have low vitamin D, and vitamin D can also help bring zinc into the cell and have other purposes. And then we add in aspirin, because one of the big problems with COVID-19 and the spike protein that's in these vaccines is that it promotes thromboses or clots. And so you want to anticoagulate gently during the course of the infection with aspirin and move on to more potent anticoagulants if it gets worse, to prevent clotting. And that's what leads to the severe end reaction processes in the patients that are far beyond those first 5 to 7 days when our protocol is meant to be used. So I hope that gives you some background on it. It's simple though in reality, and it's well tolerated, and it can be intensified, as I said, where these things, HCQ, can be extended out for another 5 to 30 days if needed, as can ivermectin. One can add in an agent called colchicine. That's a gout agent, but it has a anti-inflammatory, distinctive anti-inflammatory action that in a double-blind study, placebo-controlled, showed it decreased hospitalization in COVID-infected patients. So that I use also in patients when it's indicated. And all of this is intended to prevent hospitalization and death, of course, and to prevent the long COVID condition. And that it's becoming clear that the long COVID is due to the spike protein persisting for months and months in certain classes of what are called monocytes in the individuals that were infected that didn't get early treatment. And so now there's a Dr. Bruce Patterson who's doing some phenomenal work on the inflammatory processes and identifying the remnants of the spike protein, this product that's in these vaccines that actually end up triggering terrible symptoms in people that have long COVID. And now it can be surmounted with the knowledge of that fact and knowledge of the cytokines that are triggered by that presence.
Now, for if there are any physicians listening, or for individuals that aren't in your geographic proximity, is there anywhere that they can go to find your treatment protocols? Is it something that they can just look up? Let's say a physician is listening to this in Mexico City. Can they?
There are definitely websites, and ours has been published in the local newspaper called the desertreview.com under Frontline Doctors COVID treatment update from April of 2021. However, it's also presented in many different sites, such as that of actually Steve Kirsch has a website that's very informative. I don't know if you are familiar with that, but he lists the different protocols and they're able to be reviewed and selected from. It's, I think, in any case, you'll have to get the web address for that, Tommy. List that if you'd like. And then one of the best ones is the outpatient COVID outpatientcare.com, a website called covidoutpatientcare.com that is put up by by Jean-Pierre Kikens and his separate website that has a lot of all these protocols too, called covexit.com, covexit, covexit.com. And so there are quite a few sites for seeing these protocols.
Okay, I'll make sure to put those in the description.
Yeah, please do.
Absolutely. For your treatment now, is there, and I believe you may have answered this, but this is all going over my head, is there a time in the infection or past the infection or in the timeline of the disease that your treatment does not work? Is there a point that is past the point of no return? Do you have to switch gears?
Yeah, it's less and less effective as the condition progresses. And so it can be effective even if it's 9 or 10 days after the initiation of the symptoms of COVID-19. However, if it's past 14 to 20 days, it's probably reached the end of the second or third phase of the COVID-19 infection or pathophysiology, and those are the inflammatory phase involving the cytokine storm and pneumonia, and then the even later phase, or the evolution of that into the microthrombosis phase, where blood clots are forming and there's a real risk of emboli throughout the body and organ failure. Those are then in those points, the individuals having severe respiratory insufficiency and may even be in the intensive care unit getting high flow oxygen.
So when you said as late as 9 to 10 days after the symptoms show, so it's not necessarily that you have to catch it within 10 days of the infection, because if it lays dormant, or if the symptoms don't arise after 14 days, then there would be no way you could. So it's after the symptoms.
Well, it has to do, it varies on the individual and their resiliency and ability to naturally suppress the multiplication and spread of the virus. And they, in the majority of patients that are high risk with multiple comorbidities like hypertension and diabetes and obesity and heart disease, they're likely not to be able to prevent the evolution and spread, the extension of this into that inflammatory phase, and they would need other treatments that would be brought in. And unfortunately, they go to the hospital and they still get remdesivir and dexamethasone and things that the NIH, FDA pushed forward, that particularly remdesivir, that doesn't work very well, very costly, and just has sort of been accepted as a standard of care, which really bothers me a great deal.
And in a couple more minutes, and everything you're talking about, all the drugs and the treatments and the combinations of these that you're talking about, these are all A, generic, and there's no high profit margin, and B, they've all been studied for, dare I say, decades.
Yes, exactly. They're tried and true and very effective for various other problems. But now they're focused in on what they never were appreciated to be able to be acting in, and yet they definitely do have these actions. They were there. They should have been publicized and investigated. There should have been an effort on prevention with them, prophylaxis. All of this should have been done, and yet it was all sacrificed for the vax, and the billions and billions and billions that go into the remuneration to these companies for those and individuals.
Absolutely. I mean, it kind of sounds like the OxyContin commercials. There's no downs. It's these drugs. Yeah. They're generics. They have no side effects.
I hope that comes out sometime.
It will. Right? It will in time. It always does.
Well, it may. It's taking too long from my perspective.
It might not be timely. In time, the truth will come out. I mean, you're right. Maybe not soon enough to affect change. The truth will come. It always does. It's just, I think, well, the only thing we can do is be the change you want to see in the world. I'm not a physician, so clearly I don't practice this, but I can interview individuals such as yourself who is practicing this, who is going to be going to Rome and giving a speech. And this is right. This is how it does change, is we can all sit around going, how come no one else is doing it? And it's like, well, what are you doing? And this is how the ball gets rolling. And more than anything, you know you're on the right side. You know what you're doing is correct. You know that you're upholding your Hippocratic oath. You know that you're treating people as a physician. And that is what I admire. And I know you're a very busy man, and I know that you've got to run. I told you I wouldn't keep you 1 minute over longer than I said I would.
It's a pleasure, Tommy. I look forward to having another podcast after I get back from Rome.
Absolutely. I would love to. I'm happy you brought that up, so I didn't have to. I'll send you an email. I would love to talk to you after that. It'd be absolutely wonderful.
I hope it is an event worthwhile for everyone in concern.
It will be. If you're going there, then it's going to be worthwhile. I believe it. Dr. Farid, thank you, sir. God bless you.
Yeah,
and I'll send you this when it's up. Take care. Godspeed. God bless.